Thanks largely to the mapping work of coral physiologist Terry Hughes, we now know the Great Barrier Reef has undergone mass coral bleaching twice in the last 2 years. This is an unprecedented phenomenon. It's led up to 2/3 of the reef's coral dead or severely impacted. Now, more than ever, it's necessary to translate the insights from environmental sciences into sustainable behaviours to halt this challenge. It is an environmental challenge driven by elevated sea surface temperatures, which themselves are underpinned by climate change and carbon emissions from all over the world. It is an example of an urgent, truly global collective action problem. Our project seeks to answer the question, how can interdisciplinary research help to translate insights from environmental science into truly sustainable behaviours that mitigate the effects of climate change? I'm an environmental scientist who's been making maps of the Great Barrier Reef for 7 years now. I have 2 primary motivations for proposing this project. Firstly, I'd like to take forward the legacy of a dataset that spans 90 years on the northern islands of the Great Barrier Reef. They were last mapped in 1973 when they were compared to maps that were made in 1928, 45 years earlier. This resulted in a landmark study looking at 45 years of environmental change on the islands of the Great Barrier Reef. Next year is the 45-year anniversary of that study, and I would like to carry that legacy forward. Secondly, I'm one of those environmental scientists who's been working on modelling the effects of sea level rise, ocean acidification and coral bleaching. It seems to me that some of that work feels a bit futile now that the predictions and the outputs of our models have come to pass. I'm looking for new ways to translate the insights from my environmental science research into more meaningful environmental outcomes. Our core team for this project is comprised of myself, Lucas Elaine and Leah Gibbs. For 2 years, Lucas has been working on socially engaged art and environmental management. His focus has been on agricultural practices in the sugarcane industry on the Great Barrier Reef. While attending an interdisciplinary workshop on the Great Barrier Reef that was run at the Sydney Environment Institute, Lucas was motivated to respond to requests from scientists for interdisciplinary collaborations. Lucas himself is confident that arts-driven interventions can make a difference for environmental management. He's interested to use the Great Barrier Reef as a case study for exploring broader methodological questions about comparing practices across different disciplines. For example, what would it be like to think of science as a form of art? Can insight be gained from reflecting on the parallels and the differences between methodological practices of representation? Leah Gibbs has been writing, speaking and thinking about the nexus between arts and sciences for several years. She's interested in the possibilities and potential power of scientists to communicate their research to audiences through a broad range of interdisciplinary practices. Leah's interest stems from the idea that different systems of investigation themselves lead to different investigations. Leah is keen to explore writing about the Great Barrier Reef in an essay narrative style adopted within the environmental humanities discipline. Leah's work will raise broader interdisciplinary questions about the intersection of cultural values and practices with the more formalised environmental governance and decision making. Some of the key outputs from this project are going to be highly visual, evocative representations of environmental change on the Great Barrier Reef. These might include maps, paintings, essays and poems. These lend themselves well to an exhibition that stimulates interdisciplinary thinking across a broad audience. We're currently in discussion with partners at the Western Australia Museum and the Museum of Applied Arts and Sciences in Sydney as to how we might take that forward. We will also contribute novel insight to emerging debates in the science and environmental humanities communities through journals such as Climatic Change and Environmental Humanities. The title of our project, How Art and Science Can Save the Great Barrier Reef, is a provocation. The Great Barrier Reef has been saved before by an artist, a forester and a poet. They won the battle against the Queensland state government to save the Great Barrier Reef from mining in the 1960s. This culminated in the Whitlam government's Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Act. That challenge has now grown from a local mining threat to a global climate change threat. The provocation is to think deeply about how interdisciplinary research can do what it's done again and build on those strengths to save the Great Barrier Reef.